Ooh, Jax Taylor's text messages have been revealed in a bombshell Valley season 2 finale. And we have Erika Jayne, who is reacting to the Girardi conviction finally, saying that it's taken her back to a really dark place. So let's get into it. You're listening to No Filter with Zach Peter, your go-to source for all the latest pop culture and reality TV tea, served fresh all week long. Now, let's dive in. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the dogs. Eat the cats. Have you seen that on the Tickety Talk? Where on TikTok everyone's dancing to the video from the debate, and obviously talking about the eating of the dogs and the cats in Springfield, Ohio. And then it's now like a trendy TikTok, and they're like, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, eat the cats, eat the cats. And it just reminds me of, I'm like, eat the cat also reminds me of Pat the Puss, which Erika Jayne made a thing. Pat the puss, pat the puss, pat the puss, pat the puss. Let me know where you guys are, if you're watching this live on the Tickety Talk or you're watching this live on the YouTube. Let me know where you're watching in from so I can give you a little shout out. But yeah, welcome on in, guys. Early bird. Yes, we are early today because obviously on Tuesdays I tape the pop report, so I have to go into studio in just a bit. Evelyn is watching live from Palm Springs. Suzanne says she's live on TikTok. Thank you, my love. I would not have guessed that from TikTok. Let's see. Ooh, the Diddy charges just dropped. Yes, we will be discussing that on the Pop Report. So stay tuned for that. But today I want to talk about all of the Jax Taylor, Brittany Cartwright. So they filmed the finale over the weekend on Saturday. Still unclear what the actual finale event was, but all of the cast was there. Sheena was there. Lala was not there. And apparently somebody came on in, they trickled on in and revealed to Brittany some text messages between Jax and other women, like very naughty text messages, very explicit text messages that were very graphic and in detail of what I know. Yesterday on the podcast, I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't think Jax is sleeping around right now. I think he's like, in his ED era where, he needs a little help to like, I just don't, I think maybe he has some low testosterone and that's why he wasn't hooking up with Brittany, even though they were married and that's his wife. Well, apparently I was wrong because he seems to be um all over town. But like, I don't know if it's that salacious when you really think about it because he's technically single. I mean, it does feel very fast to be out of a relationship that was as long term as his relationship with Brittany. They're married, they're still legally married, but he's like already, listen, I was trying to give Homeboy the benefit of the doubt, but it seems like he has already moved on. Do we think that this is a good thing? um, I mean, he's technically allowed to be free. He's allowed to date other people. He's allowed to hook up with other people, as is Brittany. I just feel like it's a little soon. Pamela says, nope, not surprised, sadly. Yeah, I I kind of agree. I mean, I guess I'm a little surprised, but like when you really think about it, and when you really think about Jax, it's like, well, no, not really. Laura says Jax is always a bull in a china shop. Well, Janelle. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Which, by the way, well, that's what's going on. So that's the big bombshell reveal from the Vanderpump Rules finale. It filmed on Saturday. The 14th is when filming wrapped. I don't think there'll be any other things that they need to pick up on. I know they still have like confessionals and stuff to film, but the show season 2 is expected to return in 2025. So we have quite a ways away before we see any of this play out. But listen, he's technically single. He's allowed to do whatever he wants to do at this point. Like Brittany doesn't want to marry him. So whoever showed her, I'm sure it was one of the gays. Remember Messy Pink Boots from last season? What was his name? Simon? I don't remember what his name was. But remember he had those pink boots on and he was the one that was being all messy, and then him and then Jared Lips. I like Jared Lips. Jared Lips invited me to his comedy show a few months ago. But I think it was one of the messy gays that went, or maybe it was Zach with the bad hair. Maybe he came. Somebody showed Brittany the text, how they even got the text messages. Also, why are these women trying to hook up with Jax and then screenshotting the text messages so that they can reveal them to Brittany? Like, why would you as a woman even want to do that? Like, why would you be like, oh, here are my text messages hooking up with your ex? And then like have that be revealed. Like whoever revealed this to Brittany, like is not her friend, right? Because like all they're doing is hurting her by revealing these text messages to her and doing it on the show. Because obviously Brittany's going to be uncomfortable with it, you know? Evely says, I think he was turned off that Brittany gained weight with her pregnancy. Jax always liked a hot body and he's kind of shallow. Well, well, we said that, didn't we? Yeah, I think Jax is a little vain. And to be honest, I think it was I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of his motivation. Like that's just who Jax is. Jax is a jerk. And I wouldn't be surprised. He's vain, he's a jerk. He's always kind of been that way. Yeah. Lexi says, Zach, I bring peace this week. I'm sorry for being rude last week. Life was liffin and life was lifin and you didn't deserve me being raunchy. Cheers to a new week and my fave influencer. Oh my, were you being raunchy? I don't even remember. Listen, people are so mean to me on the internet. You think I'm gonna remember one little mean comment somebody made in a live stream? I don't let that affect me. I'm good. I'm alive, you know? Jackie says, Hi, Zach. I would like to get back into running. Can you give any advice on training? How do you do your training? How do I do my training? Um, I mean, I go every day. Well, mostly every day. Now I've cut back from doing every day. Now I go 5 to 6 times a week. I usually can't work out on Tuesdays because, like, obviously here we are at 7 a.m. We're streaming live, and then after this, I have to go tape the pop report. So I just usually don't have time to work out. I have to work out in the morning. I'm like a 6 a.m. Or earlier workout person. Um, and since I go to Orange Theory, the earliest class they have is 6 a.m. So it just doesn't fit into my schedule on Tuesdays. And then I usually also take off Sundays. This past week I didn't because I decided to go for a run and I ended up running 13 miles in under 2 hours, mind you. Snap, snap at the puss. That's right. I did that. Um, did Orange Theory help with your training? Well, I'm not like officially like training for a marathon, right? I'm planning on running a half marathon in Long Beach, but I technically ran a half marathon on Sunday, ran 13 miles in under, or yeah, 13 miles in under 2 hours. So that was technically a half marathon. Um, but like I run consistently. I like to run outdoors on the weekends. I've tried to, I do a lot of treadmill training. Try to do a lot of sprints, do a lot of interval training. I try to do as much running on an incline. That way I can build strength in my legs. So that way when I'm running on more of a flat road, I'm able to kind of keep it going. So yeah. You started out slow, right? And you're consistent. Yeah, I started Orange Theory last September, October-ish. And I started with doing twice a week, and then I moved up to 4 times a week, and then it was really in January of this year that I really started to to go for. And even when it came to running, like my base run, I think I was at like a 5.5. And then progressively I moved up to like a 6.5 base. And then I moved up to a 7 base. And now I'm like at an 8 to 8.5 base pace. Um, my push is at a 10 and my all out speed is at a 12. And I try to run all out even at an incline. I think the highest I've done is a 12% speed at a 6% incline. So the more you try to run with inclines, whew, loved Orange Theory, but kept hurting my back. What are you doing to hurt your back, Suzanne? You gotta make sure you have good form. I see a lot of people with bad form. A lot of people with bad form. I'm not always perfect at form, but whew. Susan Flower says interval running was clutch for me training for my half. It was the fast. Yeah. Interval training, I would say, is probably the best. And I would say start on the treadmill because the treadmill is easier than running outside. Do some inclines, slowly build up to it. Because like where I'm at now, I started back in January. So like that's 8, 9 months of just like progressively building and challenging myself. even pushing my speeds, trying to get, as close to a 5-minute mile as possible. My best mile was 5:22. So, just slowly, progressively build. Inclines have been really helpful though, running on inclines. Start slow, start small. Those are mistakes that I made, was going too hard too fast and not giving myself enough recovery time. Foam roller, you're going to need that a lot, and give yourself recovery time. I was really pushing myself a little too hard, and then I was injuring myself. I was getting like really bad shin splints and hurting my hip and hurting, all the things. So, are you just sprinting the whole mile? Yes. Well, yeah, when you're trying to do a fast mile, you typically just sprint the entire mile. Whew. Pamela B says, if you see me run, you better follow suit because that means someone or something is chasing me. I didn't love running. I used to hate running. I was not a runner. Now I really, really do love running. Zach, what kind of sneakers do you wear? I wouldn't take my advice on sneakers because my coach Shelby just told me I need to retire. I got some on cloud sneakers. I don't know anything about running sneakers. I know some people like Nike, some people like the Hokas. The Hoka brand kind of reminds me of Skechers. Remember the shape ups? Those with the giant soles, and then all the old people were like falling all over the place. Um, so I have the ones I have right now. I had a pair of Nikes before that were like basic trainers, and then I ended up switching to the on cloud ones that have like like the sole has like the holes in them. That way it has like a little bit more bounce. But I felt like I ran through those pretty quickly. I got those in April, and I've definitely ran through them already. So I don't. But I also run a lot, and I run pretty intensely. So definitely was the yeah, foam. The foam ones I guess are helpful. On cloud are the ones I currently have now. Don't know if I would necessarily recommend them. The Hokai here is really good. There's mountain climbers that I've been looking into. There are different ones. I went for an assessment, but they told me, Brooks, yeah, say go for an assessment. That'll help you. Get fitted for shoes. Dick's will do it. Road runners as well. Everyone's feet are so different. I know. I was posting about me foam rolling on Instagram, and somebody was like, "Oh my god, your feet! I love your feet." I was like, "Oh, do I need to start doing feet content? Send me some tips, and I'll do some feet content. I think I have cute feet." Okay, that said, we're sorry, we got off track. But yeah, that was the update on Jax in the Valley. Um, I was also catching up on, because I'm always saying, "Well, Janelle," and so people didn't realize that that came from Teen Mom 2, Barb, Janelle. Her mom Barb, who's always on her because Janelle was a hot mess. Well, I was catching up on, because I don't know if you remember, a few months ago we were covering the um, Amber Portwood Gary 2.0 story. Amber Portwood was on 16 and Pregnant. Then she went to Teen Mom OG. Now she's a cast member on Teen Mom The Next Chapter. And I finally decided to watch Teen Mom The Next Chapter. All I really care about are Macy, Caitlyn, Amber. Loved when Farrah was on, because Farrah was always a hot mess, but she left the show a long time ago. So Macy, Farrah, and Amber were the only three because they were the OGs. They were the only ones I cared about. They brought in Cheyenne, um, which Cheyenne and Ryan, they were fine. They were on, what was it, The Challenge, and then they brought them onto Teen Mom OG with the season that they brought on Bristol Palin, but Bristol Palin only lasted one season. Whatever, I digress. Cheyenne, not Chanel. Cheyenne, I'm okay with Cheyenne. I've gotten used to Cheyenne. You know, cool. I'm cool with Cheyenne. Ryan's hot. Her new boyfriend, Zach, he's okay. Ryan's hot, though, her baby daddy. But that said, this Teen Mom, The Next Chapter, they have so many other moms, and I don't know who half of these moms are. And I'm like, why are we watching all of these moms? No, thank you. I don't care about most of them. I want Amber. I want Amber, Macy, Caitlyn. I'll settle for Cheyenne if we can't have Farrah, right? Anyway, so if you'll remember, a few months ago, we were talking about the story. Amber Portwood obviously has a baby with Gary Shirley. That's her daughter, Leah. She ended up, remember, they had the domestic violence issues. Amber ended up going to prison for a few years, came back out. Then she ended up with one of the producers on Teen Mom OG, ended up having a baby with him. Um, both baby daddies are the primary parents that have custody of the kids. Amber does not have custody of Leah or her other baby. What was the baby's name? I don't remember. But anyway, Amber doesn't have custody of her kids. But now she's found this new guy. His name is also Gary, and we refer to him as Gary 2.0. A few months ago, they had announced that they'd gotten engaged. Then, next thing you know, James. Yes, James is the baby. Thank you, Ashley. James is her son's name. So we have Leah and James. Those are her two kids. Only visits with them, doesn't have primary custody of either of her two kids. She, I believe, signed the rights over to Gary when she went to prison, and then the second baby, I think she lost in that case because remember there were like the reports she was chasing them around with a machete, and he like moved to California, and she just was in a bad place. And then so she got engaged to this new guy, Gary. And we saw the reports in the news. I didn't realize that they were filming Teen Mom the entire time. Okay, so we're watching in this new season of Teen Mom, the next chapter, we're watching this all play out on the show. We saw the proposal, which was so weird. He did the proposal in front of Macy and in front of Caitlyn, which they were like weirded out by it. It was all very, very bizarre. And so now I guess in the finale, which it seems like they weren't filming when Gary went missing. So there were reports Amber was at her brother's wedding. She took Gary 2.0 with her, was very happy to introduce Gary 2.0 to her family and, get everyone comfortable with him because now they're engaged, they're going to get married. We saw the engagement on the show. So the finale aired last week and the finale tackles his disappearance. So it was the day after the brother's wedding. They were staying in like a cabin. I think it was like an Airbnb. Amber and Gary 2.0 were staying there because they were there for the wedding. Next thing you know they get into some sort of fight. And we now, based off of what we saw in the finale on the show, we now learn, which was kind of the speculation that was being reported, was that it had to do with his family disapproving of Amber. And so now we find out that it was because his dad found Amber's Wikipedia page and was reading up about Amber. And obviously, you hear about Amber and her last two baby daddies. Not that Gary 2.0 is going to be baby daddy number 3, but you hear about like Gary 1.0, and Leah's dad and how she was beating him up. And then she ended up going to prison. And then you hear about the second baby daddy, Andrew, and how, she was chasing him around the house with a machete while he had the baby in his arms. And like, it was a whole thing, right? So I guess the dad's like, whoa, red flag. This chick is crazy. You can't marry her. And so Gary 2.0, rather than breaking up with Amber, Gary 2.0 decides he's just going to peace out. And so they get into a little argument and then he leaves the cabin, leaves his phone behind. I believe leaves his wallet. No, I think he took his wallet, but he left his phone behind and then just full on disappears. Doesn't tell Amber where he's going, doesn't say anything. I believe that they saw him, I think, at like a Walgreens, and then she filed a missing person report. And she went on the internet and she was like telling people, we need to find him. He's missing. And then the whole internet thought that she like Carol Baskined him and fed him to the tigers, which we're now seeing play out on the finale of Teen Mom OG. We don't see they don't give us much in the finale other than like Macy has like a FaceTime with Caitlyn of like, did you see the news? Gary's gone missing. I'm going to go visit Amber. I'm going to drive her to, I'm going to drive her home because she was obviously out of town for her brother's wedding. So Macy went to go get her and drive her half of the way. And then the Teen Mom crew, MTV, ended up driving her the rest of the way home. And so all we really get in the finale is obviously the news reports, but mostly the footage of Amber in the car with the cameras on her as she's reacting to stuff. And so within that whole episode in the finale, which was only an hour, and they have all these 15 other teen moms that are also featured in it. And I don't give a shit about them. I don't care about all these other 15 teen moms. I don't know who any of them are. Don't care to get to know it. Some of them look like a hot mess, though, that maybe I should revisit that. But we did see Janelle. Well, Janelle had been off our screens for a while because Janelle was always a hot mess. And one of her exes, like Carol Baskin, the dogs or something. And that's the friendly way of saying the words that we're not allowed to say on YouTube and TikTok. We're just going to refer to Carol Baskin to them. Okay. Fed him to the tigers. But so he Carol Baskin, I think one of the dogs, and like that was a whole scandal. And then Janelle ended up getting fired because of him from MTV. And so it's just, well, Janelle, she's been a hot mess. But so we now get to catch up with Janelle. She's the only one that I was excited to catch up on because we see that like Barb's not in her life anymore, but she ends up getting custody of her son Jace. And so we see them where they're at now, which is interesting. But the whole Amber disappearance, we other than learning about the Wikipedia page, and that's how the dad found out about Amber's past, we don't get a whole lot more outside of that. Um, so it's just, Zach, it's too many other moms to follow. That's my okay, thank you. I'm glad you agree with that. It was way too many other moms to follow. Um, and also these other new moms don't care about them. Sorry, how many Fs do I give? Zero, 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 none, not one. Okay? None, not one. So yeah, it was it was a fine finale. I wouldn't say it was the best finale. I liked that we got to check in with Janelle, you know, the Amber Portwood. I mean, just watching the season and watching her relationship with this Gary guy play out, only to know how it ends. But in the finale, we go from well, in like the last 3 episodes, we go from here's Gary, we're engaged, I love him, we're getting married, we're in the next, he's missing, and then next thing you know, from he's missing, then we find him by the end of the episode, and he's okay, but he just like wanted to get away from Amber, and which is kind of sad. Like, just break up with her. Like, you don't need to go missing. Like, that's a whole new level of ghosting, right? When you decide, like, okay, I don't want to be with this person. My family doesn't approve of her. So I'm just going to go missing. I'm not going to tell her where I'm going. I'm just going to peace out and disappear and let the world know that I have disappeared, right? Which I remember the reports originally were saying that like his family hadn't even heard from him and his family didn't even know where he was at. And now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, the family probably did know and they just didn't want her to know about this. So they were probably lying to her. So now I feel bad for her because then she's in the car and she's crying to MTV and she's just like, everyone thinks that I Carol Baskin to him. She's like, they just think the worst in me. And I'm like, well, you do have, I mean, your last dude, you were chasing him around with a machete. So like, it's not a far stretch, right? Like, I understand why people thought, like, it was not the nicest thing to think that about her, but, like, come on, don't tell me you weren't thinking of it too. She made her bed. Yeah, as awful as that is to say, yeah. Okay. Kat says, "I feel like we were all lied to about Amber being the problem when Gary forced her to choose violence." Did he? Is that the take for taken? Was it are we saying Gary deserved to get beat by Amber? Gary was a big old man. He was like 3 times Amber's size. Amber, when she was in her Ozempic days before Ozempic was a real thing, she was in her something days. She was doing something. Um, Watching the old clips of Teen Mom though are so good, right? I mean, who hasn't chased their man around with a machete? um, the old school, like even Caitlyn and Tyler, right? Because we're also seeing in this we stand Gary 1.0. He's a fantastic. I do agree. He is a really good dad. Christina's a great stepmom, like a great bonus mom. Like you can tell that like Leah really loves Christina. Like as much as it breaks my heart to see Leah choose Christina over Amber, who's her biological mother, I get it and I understand. And like I'm just glad that Leah at least has Christina. Um, it's hard because it's like I want to root for Amber for the sake of Leah. I want Amber to show up and rise to the occasion for Leah, and Amber's just not capable of doing that, you know? Men know what to say when to force you over the edge. You know, that is not untrue. Men know when they're playing with you, right? Did you see the original it was like trending again recently. The proposal, the Gary 1.0 and Amber proposal when he's proposing to her on the beach. And she like is like trying to direct him as to like what to say and how to propose to her, and he's like not following script, and she's like getting all mad at him. He's like, God, I've done it so many times, and she's like, really, Gary? And he's like, twice. It was funny because they're like kids, you know, they're like these children, which is crazy. So Caitlyn and Tyler, right? We got to catch up with them on what's going on with their life, and in their life, we're seeing that um, Brandon and Teresa, because Caitlyn and Tyler put their baby up for adoption on the original 16 and Pregnant show. And I was looking back at old clips from when they were doing them, when they were meeting with Brandon and Teresa, and their kids, they're literally 16, 17-year-old, they're children. And they're in this meeting trying to like interview parents to adopt their baby. And they made it like very clear from the beginning that they wanted to be part of their kid's life. But like you see Caitlyn crying and she's like, my mom just wasn't a good mom. And like we moved around a lot. And at one point I had to live with my grandmother because my mom wasn't capable of taking care of me and all of this stuff. Right. And poor Caitlyn's like this 16-year-old child. And she's just, oh, it breaks your heart when you see it now because you don't, I guess I didn't realize it. I mean, I'm closer to their age. So I was also a teenager when this was originally airing. So I didn't see them as babies then. But like watching it back now as like a 31-year-old grown adult, I'm like, wow, like they were children. Like who was protecting them? Who was taking care of them? And like in these meetings with them as they're putting their baby up for adoption. And so now we're seeing fast forward, what, almost 20 years. Um, Now we're seeing that, like, maybe it is 20? I'm trying to think. Yeah, because Janelle said Jace was 19. So, yeah, I would imagine Leah's what? How old is Leah? 16, 17? Oh my god, don't even talk Tyler was had a whole live about his adoption trauma. Well, Tyler's been through a lot. Like, Tyler has been through a lot. Remember how, like, raw like, watching some of those scenes back, like, Tyler when he was talking about Carol Baskin himself, that, like, watching that back now is crazy. The Diddy indictment was just unsealed. Whoo! I guess we're gonna review that on the Pop Report. Jace is 16, not 19. Okay, so it's been about like 16, 17, maybe even 18 years. Yeah. So, yeah. Because if Jace is 16 and Jace was Teen Mom 2, because Janelle was on Teen Mom 2. Okay, why did I think he was 19? Who's 19? How old's Bentley? Bentley, Leah is 15, and so is Carly. Oh, wow. Okay, so Carly's 15. Old. I may be old, but I didn't watch for different reasons. Felt very uncomfortable to see children having children. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like they were babies at the time. I may be old too. But like I'm just saying as an adult versus being 16, 17, 18 at the time that they were 16, 17, 18, or I think I'm a year or two younger than them. Maybe a couple years younger. So watching it like they didn't feel like children, but you've seen it, they're babies. But so now we see that like Brandon and Teresa have completely cut them out of their lives and like they don't want to give them access to Carly, which was their daughter that they put up for adoption, which, they've always made it very clear like they wanted to have an open adoption. It wasn't a closed adoption. They always wanted access to their daughter. But it's crazy, because I understand Brandon and Teresa being like, listen, when we signed up for this was like a little MTV docu-series. We thought it was going to be like a true life, like not what it's become, right? They didn't know that 16 and pregnant was going to turn into Teen Mom, and Teen Mom was going to turn into Teen Mom OG, and Teen Mom OG was going to turn into Teen Mom Family Vacation, and Teen Mom the next chapter, and that they were going to have their whole lives exposed for the public. Like Brandon and Teresa are like a wholesome little Christian couple that like probably grew up on an Amish farm. Like those are the vibes that they have. Um, I have I too have issues with Dr. Drew. He's controversial, but I won't get into that here. Well, yeah, I mean, it's yeah. He definitely, I mean, he was the one hosting the reunions and he did therapy. I mean, he did try to help them and he did mentor them a lot. I actually like Dr. Drew. I think he definitely made a lot of mistakes when it come well, I don't know if we would even consider the mistakes like Celebrity Rehab, all of those shows. Like it was very it exploited a lot of people and their issues, but like we also learned a lot from it. Dr. Drew is toxic. Why do we think Dr. Drew is toxic? When is Disaster Daters back for a new series? I just watched it all a second time. Whew. Season 1 and 2 or just season 2? Which of Disaster Daters did you rewatch? Give me your full synopsis of the rewatch. But yeah, Eveline says, I believe that Tyler and Caitlyn overstepped their boundaries and the open adoption was only till Carly reached the age of 5. Yeah, listen, I get it, right? I understand Brandon and Teresa. I understand where they're coming from. I'm just getting here what text. Oh, you missed the talk of the text, Nicole. That was Jax was sending all these naughty, explicit text messages to all these other women. And then someone on the Valley cast ended up showing Brittany at the finale party. So we're gonna see that all play out at the finale, like all of his very explicit text. But my thing about Jax is like he is entitled. He's single now. He's entitled to be as naughty and dirty and kinky as he wants. Yes, like you hit the nail on the head. It felt very exploitative. Yeah, it was, but like, I learned a lot watching Celebrity Rehab. I did too. I mean, I don't think shows like that would work today. Remember what was not My Strange Addiction? Intervention. Whew, those were wild shows. But so yeah, I mean, I feel for Caitlyn and Tyler now. I do agree with people that they've overstepped their boundaries. Because ultimately, but like they were like it's so hard because it's like when they made this decision, they were kids. They were babies. And now they're grown, you know? So yeah. Intervention 2024 is good. Is it? I didn't even know Intervention was still on. Did they reboot it, or has it been on this entire time? I didn't even realize people were still watching Intervention. Remember Cops? Whew, that was wild. Those shows were crazy. There was there was no Bethany Frankel reality reckoning. She ruined reality TV. I was just revisiting Date My Mom. Mm. I just did an Instagram reel and a TikTok video revisiting Date My Mom. Do you guys remember this show where one suitor would go on a date with 3 different moms and then based off of those dates would pick one of the moms to date their kid? That was wild. There was this one. Okay, it's crazy what we used to watch on television, right? We'll get into the Erika Jayne stuff in just a sec. But so I was watching one of the episodes. I was watching a couple of them, but there was one specifically where this one guy was dating these 3 moms, and then he picks the wild, crazy mom because he thinks, oh, I'm really tame and I'm really chill. Um, and I need someone that's a little crazy, right? So then he tells the crazy mom with the red hair, he's like, I want to go on a date with your daughter. And she's like, all right. And so first they have to eliminate the first 2 daughters that they don't want to go on a date with. And so the suitor has no idea what the kids look like. So as he's eliminating each of the moms then reveal who their daughter or who their son are, and they come out of a limo. And then you see like, oh wow, this was a really hot daughter. I can't believe I passed on her because her moms didn't sell her very well, which also kind of sounds like Pimp My Kid, right? Which isn't a real show, but I'm thinking Date My Mom is essentially it's like Pimp My Kid, because you're pimping out your kids. But so this guy goes and he dismisses the first 2 and realizes, oh, they're both really attractive girls. Let's see what I ended up getting. And so he picks, mom number 3. And so the girl comes out and she's this, fuller bodied girl. She's like a Cabernet, right? Very full bodied, you know, a very bold kind of wine, right? And I guess he wasn't expecting a full-bodied wine. He was expecting something a little lighter, not necessarily big boned. But so the crazy thing is, as she's coming out, and listen, she was in her awkward teenage phase, and you can just tell this poor girl was in her awkward phase. She has like really badly bleached bangs, like her haircut, you could tell her hair was like very dried and very dyed and just like damaged. And then her bangs alone, her hair was dark, but then her bangs were bleached blonde. But it was like before we like had Chris Appleton and mastered the platinum, and it was just like a really brassy yellowy blonde. And then she had this like heavy, thick red lipstick, and it was wild, right? But so she comes out, and then his face is like, his reaction is like, oh, like that's not what I was expecting. And then they're playing these songs like, You're My Butterball. And I'm like, oh my God. And we're calling her a butter. Sydney says, like a Cabernet. What a nice way to describe someone full bodied. Well, that's what a voluptuous. Well, yeah, listen. So she comes out and then his face is like, "Oh," and then, then they have to like and then he's kind of like, "Well, sometimes you miss." He has his little confession. It's like, "Sometimes you don't always get it." And so then they end up like skipping off into the sunset, and then the song that they put them skipping off into the sunset to is like something about "You're my sunshine, all the chubby girls, I'm gonna make you mine. And I'm like, why? Like, who chose this music? Who did this editing? Like, it was wild. And then in the end, she falls. And you can tell she like actually they were like skipping and she was like wearing these chunky wedge heels. And like she actually falls, but then they like leave that in there. And I'm like, oh my God, this poor girl. She was probably like, this is gonna be a fun show. Which, by the way, I filmed a show for MTV. I filmed a lot of shows. I filmed a show for Lifetime. I filmed a show for MTV. Um, filmed a show for Netflix, a couple of like Netflix shows. Um, yeah, I've done quite a lot, but so I know how a lot of these shows work. But yeah, it was wild. It was wild. They even had like a gay version. Like MTV was very progressive. They had a gay version of Date My Mom. Like it was crazy. Whew. Mm-mm, mm-mm-mm. Pamela says, "How does he know that she didn't like him either?" I don't know. I mean, she probably didn't like him either. A lot of those dating shows, like, you don't really get to pick what you like. You're kinda just put with who you're paired with through casting, and you kind of have to fake it sometimes. But you can just tell, like, knowing how editing and how these shows work, like, you can just tell he was just like, well, like, the reactions, like, they set him aside and were like, "Okay, now show me how you would react if she came out really hot," and he'd be like, "Yeah," and show me how you'd react if she was shocking and not your type, and he'd be like, "Whoa," right? And they make you do all these different reactions, and you never know how they're gonna edit it or which reactions they're gonna use. They just do that so that they have these varieties, right? Or all these different lines and all these different pickups, and then they edit it in a wild way. Lori in the live chat says, "I went to MTV's Spring Break in the '80s, and it was the Wild West." Yeah, remember those shows? And they would make girls do like wet T-shirt contests. It was crazy. The poor girl's bad hair day and fumble will be forever captured on celluloid. Yeah, it was poor girl. She fell. Her bad hair. Like you can just tell she was in that awkward teenage phase. And you knew the producers were like, oh, she's in her awkward teenage phase, you know, full bodied, just like, let's do it. But the music, I was like, why would they put all the chubby girls? I'm gonna make you like. I was like, oh my god, it was wild, like truly crazy, 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 crazy. Mob wives are doing a podcast now talking crap about each other. I saw that Drita did a podcast. I didn't know any of the other mob wives were doing podcasts. I know Renee is always on TikTok. Every time I go on TikTok, Renee's live on TikTok. And I'm just like, girl, how do you have this much time? You're like live 24/7. Ooh, excuse me. Kat said they used to film their stuff in my high school, and I met Lala from MTV, who was a huge bitch. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Um, MTV Spring Break, yeah, that was wild. Those are some wild times. But, like, even, like, A Shot at Love with Tila Tequila, crazy. Like, MTV had the craziest shit on television. Pamela says, "Chubby chasers of the world unite." Are you a chubby chaser, Pamela? A little thick. I like a guy with a little meat. I don't like the chiseled bodies. That is just not my type. I don't like a chiseled like, yeah, I want you to, like, I don't know. Nikki says, I rewatched both Disaster Daters series. So sassy and hilarious. My compassion laid with you, not with Jeff. You clearly developed feelings and let your guard down. Just wanted to acknowledge. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, so yeah. I'm glad that you guys are rewatching Disaster Daters. I would love to do a season 3 of Disaster Daters. We haven't talked about a season 3 yet. Um, I mean, Jeff expressed on the show he was going through some stuff. So we'll see if we do a season 3. It probably won't be anytime soon. We might take a break, let Jeff's life kind of settle a little bit and, see how we would make mix things up and shift it in season 3 to make it feel fresh. Obviously, we have to like also date more too in order to put our news stories out there. Laura says, according to the live, Caitlyn and Tyler's parents were in the back getting off while the court proceedings were going on, objecting the adoption. Yeah, I remember that. They didn't want them to put the baby up for adoption, but like they were, flying high as a kite. What was the MTV show where kids in school had a goal and they would receive coaches and whatnot to achieve it? Oh, I remember this show. Um, Made? Was that it? Made? Did I get that right? Wow. My brain retains Made. Yep, that's right. It was Made. Yes, I remember that. Crazy. Nikki says, I love Disaster Daters. I hope you feel better soon, Jeff. I know you already have tons of stories to share, Zach. I actually, well, I have some stories. I don't have like a lot of good ones. I have to like put myself back out there again. Usually, when we're gearing up for a new season of Disaster Daters, is when I fully like put myself out there and throw myself into the dating world. So we'll see. Now that we're on break for the season, I've taken a step back, but we'll see. I auditioned for Maid at my high school, obviously didn't get it all. Yeah, Maid was wild. I did a show, it was similar to Maid. They had a bunch of, like, different people that were, like, achieving different goals. I remember I was 15 or 16 at the time. It was when 16 and Pregnant was out and they wanted to, like, put in new programming that was like 16 and Pregnant, but like the opposite, right? Because people were saying like, oh, 16 and Pregnant was like a bad example because it was like encouraging people to get pregnant so that they end up on TV. So they wanted to do like a 16 and like doing something, right? Like doing good, like achieving a goal of yours, right? And so there were a few of us that they were going to follow around. And I remember at the time I was doing a lot of fundraising for autism because obviously my background is in that nonprofit fundraising world. And so when I was in high school, I was organizing different fundraisers. And so I remember filming with MTV and them coming over and filming us like planning the next fundraiser and having a team together. And, it was crazy. And I remember like I had to wear like different outfits to make it seem like all of these things were happening on different days. And it was crazy. It was fun. I'm sad that the show never got greenlit and it never got picked up, but it was definitely a fun time. And then a few dating shows that I did as well, or that yeah. There was, like, one about red flags. That was a more recent that was a couple years ago. I think that was, like, a Netflix show because they never really tell you what the network is. They kind of, like, hinted it, and you kind of put the pieces together yourself. But there was this one show, it was about red flags and, like, what are your red flags and, like, all this stuff. So I remember filming that show and being like, "Oh, I hope that this show gets picked up. I hope that this show gets greenlit because it was all about red flags. And like, hello, I love red flags, and I'm sure I have many of them. So it was fun. I remember shooting the promos and having, like, the little red flags, like, waving them and then, like, throwing them up and doing all that fun stuff. So, yeah. What was the one where people went through each other's rooms to pick who they would date? Was it Room Raiders? How do I remember this shit? It was Room Raiders, wasn't it? Room Raiders. I wanna say that that was the show. It was called Room Raiders. Hell yeah. The reality program puts a new twist on the dating game where contestants choose a date not by their looks or charm, but by what's in their bedroom. The catch, these unsuspecting singles have no idea the rooms are going to be raided until after they're kidnapped from their house. Oh, that's right. I remember they like take them into a van. That was a whole thing. Remember that? Room Raiders. I remembered Maid and Room Raiders. My brain retains a lot. And Next, yeah. Next. We know about Next. Next. That was the real life Tinder. That was wild. Never heard of that. These are all MTV shows. Like MTV was like the pioneer of crazy reality television. Remember My Super Sweet 16, Pimp My Ride, Cribs. Those are more of like the tamer ones, like Cribs. And Cribs were all fake, right? Like those weren't even the real celebrities' houses. Um, Zach, that's amazing that you were doing that kind of stuff in high school. I'm guessing you have a very high IQ. I don't know if I have a high IQ. If I listen, what I had was high audacity, which I've always had. Like to think that like because like at that age, like at 15, 16 years old, I was like, I'm gonna change the world and I'm gonna do something good. And listen, it led to like a decade long career in fundraising prior to like pivoting full time into content creation and podcasting. But it was good. I mean, I look back at those years very fondly. I loved it. Traveled all around the world, raised a lot of money, like literally raised millions and millions of dollars to help families with kids on the autism spectrum. MTV used to be so good, RIP. It was wild, like just wild. Pamela said they would have taken one look at my room and run. I had punk rock and goth posters on the walls. Oof. The black light. Those couldn't have been real bedrooms. Some of the producers like did some shit. I can't believe the guy from Catfish broke his neck. What guy from Catfish broke his neck? Okay. First of all, what a wild pivot. Okay. Last thing that was on the notes to cover for today was Erika Jayne and her reaction to the whole Girardi conviction. Because she obviously hasn't said anything before, but it was on Two T's in a Pod because she's been recapping Real Housewives of Orange County with Teddy. And so she talks about Shannon Beador and Shannon Beador's drinking, and she says that, like, she wishes Shannon wasn't drinking because Shannon's in a really vulnerable place right now, and she thinks that it's counterproductive to drink when you're in a really dark place. And then she gets into being in a dark place herself because Teddy's like, "Well, I've done it and you've done it," and Erica's like, "Well, I did it because I was trying to." Essentially Carol Baskin herself, right? She was like, she's like, I was trying to hurt myself. I was, I was really trying to not wake up. She's like, "I didn't wanna hear any of it anymore, I was tired, I didn't care, I wanted it all to stop." Like, this is when she was going through the thick of the Girardi stuff before there was even the trial, but, like, when it was all coming out in the news and all the women were questioning her, remember? And then she had, like, those moments where she was mixing pills with drinking, and she was passing out on the boat in Mexico. I mean, I get it, she wanted to escape and run from it all. But Erica told Teddy, she's like, "I made choices to numb myself, bad choices. But this, and I know this, and that's why I continue to stay in therapy and why I got so upset when the verdict was read. Look, guilty or not, I slid back into a place where I thought, oh shit, it's happening again. I feel weird again. I feel like I can't get out of bed again." So she just talked about how she went back into that really dark place. I wish Teddy would have asked like a couple more follow-up questions and maybe like because Erica seemed to have been opening up in that moment. And as a host and as an interviewer, when somebody opens that door a crack, that's typically when I like to like dip that toe in and see how far we can dive into that topic. Because as a listener, I know that there's just that natural curiosity and interest. So I wish Teddy would have like broached that a little deeper, but you know, Nikki says, "I listened. Erica's always so refreshing, so raw, so real, such a beautiful soul. She's going through a painful divorce, terrible legal stress, and headache. I have endless love and respect for her." Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Is Catfish still on? Is Catfish still on? Erica went wild for a minute there. I mean, understandably, though, her life was turned upside down. And like the person that she thought she loved and trusted was, you know, completely abandoned her and like was not who she thought that he was. The fact that Tom paid the money back makes this whole thing sad because can you imagine how that feels to end your life like this? Yeah. I mean, but just because he put the money back doesn't mean that he was not, misappropriating those funds and still breaking the law by doing so. I think she's too old to stop. But I mean, listen, the fact that he did put the money back may affect his sentencing, right? They may show that, like, well, even though he did take the money, people are being paid back now. And like he did put all of that money back. So I don't know. Jessica says, "Love you from Wisconsin. I'm a dog groomer, and you got me through the day listening to your podcast." Oh, thank you. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat. So yeah, Tom totally betrayed her. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Very unfortunate. Um, okay. Yeah, that's what she had to say about the conviction. She's in a tough place. She's going through it. Um, but yeah, anything else? Any other thoughts, feelings, vibes, questions? It's still on, but they have a new host. Really? Who is the new host of Catfish? Nev doesn't host it anymore? Oh, interesting. Kami Crawford from Miss Teen USA. Boring. Wasn't Nev still hosting for a while though? Kami Crawford is the current host of MTV's Catfish, along with Nev. Oh, alongside Nev. Oh, okay. So Nev is still on. That's what I thought. I thought they were doing like guest hosts that were coming in. Um, okay. Did you see Erica having her own podcast? Erica, oh, do I see Erica having her own podcast? Um, no, no, I don't think she'll ever have her own podcast. I think she's enjoying the podcast with Teddy, but I don't think she would ever start her own. Oh. Catfish was canceled due to charges of misconduct by the host. He did break his neck in August 2024, but he's doing bad. Nev broke his neck? Catfish host breaks his neck. Oh my God, Nev broke his neck on an e-bike. Wow. Interesting. Would never have guessed. Oh no. But he was the one, let's see. Oh wow. Nev did face accusations. Nev is this was back in 2018. I remember this accusations of misconduct on his show Catfish. In June, MTV closed an internal investigation after a woman who previously appeared on the show accused Nev of making inappropriate comments toward her while filming. But he came back. It all came back. Huh. Interesting. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat. Eating the dogs. Eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat. Oh, all right. Well, I think that's all I have for you guys then. This was a fun time, fun episode. New episode of the Pop Report will be out. I'll dive into all the Diddy stuff. That way we can cover it on the Pop Report. You can expect that episode to drop tomorrow. Thank you guys for tuning in. Love you. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you later. We will be doing our members only later this afternoon. So if you are a member of the Zack Pack, our new night for members or new day for members only is on Tuesdays. So get ready, Freddie. All right, guys. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for all the love. Wow, I thought this was going to be a short episode and we right over 50 minutes. All right. Thank you guys. I love you. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Get a new episode of the Pop Report out on Wednesday. Apparently, a lot of people were binging seasons 1 and 2 of Disaster Daters. So go check out Disaster Daters. It's available on all podcast platforms if you want to listen, or you can watch on YouTube, watch on Spotify, listen on all your favorite podcast apps. Catch the Pop Report, also available on all your favorite podcast apps and available to watch on YouTube. You can subscribe to the Pop Report YouTube channel on my YouTube channel. There's a link there. So show it some love. Give me a follow at Just Plain Zack, or you can follow the podcast at No Filter with Zack all over the internet. Show some love. Get ready. Leave a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. I do love those reviews. I love reading them. Love giving people shout outs. So leave me a nice, good review. Let me know what you're really enjoying about the show lately, and I'll be sure to give you a shout out. All right. Bye, guys. Ciao for now. Talk to you later. Have a good one. And guzzle this coffee and run to the Pop Report studio. Okay. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.